Okay, let's go. I don't know what's wrong. Thing worked for my ex-wife. Howdy, folks. Welcome back. Tom Moto-Resto LLC, Bradenton, Florida. Finally going to get to start taking stuff off. This engine and whatever other parts I need to take it off to get the engine out of the frame. Finally getting to it. Had so much stuff I needed to get done. Busy setting up that mill, which is kind of right behind you. And, you know, I'm pretty much tapped out, waiting for other stuff to come in for that and some other stuff. So let's get back to this. As usual, and if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I have a list. Well, not really a list, but I have instructions. Freshly printed out from the service manual as far as engine removal goes. A lot of this stuff, of course, I've already gotten done. You know, the tank, the carbs, the radiator, etc. I'm just going to go down the list off camera and maybe periodically fire up the camera on different things that might seem interesting or something I think you might want to know about. And then we'll pick it up from there and start working towards getting the engine out of the frame. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to do that yet. I mentioned that in the other videos, I think it was, both of them, because I don't have a center stand. So putting it on the floor, putting down the center stand and dropping it on the floor, which I'd really like to do with my big jack, is unfortunately something I can't do because I don't really have a way to keep it upright. I just can't keep it up. Anyway, what we're going to do here is figure that out when the time comes. We obviously got to get the mufflers out. The service data didn't even say to take the headers off. It just says to take the mufflers off. I'm taking them off. And water pumps got to come off the other side. These oil pipes, some of the wiring, etc., etc. So, yeah, let's not screw around anymore. Let's get right to it. First thing I wanted to mention was I want you to keep two words in mind when you're doing this. Bagging and tagging. So whenever I take things off in a big project, they always get bagged and tagged. I have a bin that's out of shot right now, stage right, and everything goes in the bins, bagged and tagged. I had to close the door up and bring the little heater out here. It's freaking cold. I'm telling you right now, folks, it's cold. For us, it is. You know, it's like in the 50s, dropping, and it's starting to rain, so there's a front coming through. I'm going to get the mufflers off from the rear to the front, but what I figured I'd do first is, and this is what I'm going to show you, is these bolts, no matter how they're set up, whether it's an inline 4 or anything else, these exhaust, actually nuts and studs, they're usually studs, they are sometimes very frozen. So what you want to do is you want to be really careful with these and give them a shot, see if you can get them off without breaking them, because they're just not fun to play with when you have a problem and you got the backside already taken down, and you got to deal with these. So I check these first, make sure they're going to come loose without snapping or being frozen. Then I'll move to the back off camera and we'll get the rest of it off. But I just wanted to mention that. Those are really important. These are a pain in the ass if you got to drill out and put studs in. If I had to do that, I wouldn't do that until I got the engine out so I can flip it around however I want. But, you know, it's better not to have to do it at all. These connections where the mufflers hit the headers, the muffler pipe and the headers, are giving me trouble. This top one is loose. You can see it moving, but the bottom one's pretty froze. Now, normally when I get these into just a single, you know, you start twisting them, you can get it off. So I thought that wasn't going to work. But because I loosened the front ones, and I showed you before, see what happens when I twist this. You can actually it'll rotate a little bit on that top one, and then we should be able to get some oil, you know, some WD in there and get this thing to come loose. So it's starting to free up, but it is pretty damn tight as far as froze up. But we just got to get some more lube in there and get this thing out, because there's nothing else holding this thing. I tried heating it a little bit, but that's really not going to help in this situation. So just want to show you that. Let me get back to it and I'll get these off. Holy shnikes. Man, that's the tightest one I've ever had. Joke there somewhere. Oh my God. Yeah. You know, that's a good thing. Like I said, when you loosen this up, it can move around. Once it cleared, and the reason why this one came out so easy is the little packing gasket gizmo, which I'll replace. Hopefully they have them. I can get them. Once that cleared out of the way, I could really start rotating around. It just builds up all that shit inside there, and you just got to wrestle it off. Because I gotta clean all these up, and then we'll clean them up and give them a good painting with the 1300 or whatever it is degree flat black. I use that on the ZX10. It works really nice. Oh, you know, I forgot to mention before, you can't just drop these straight down and take the whole exhaust system off. The problem is up in here on a V4, and it's sort of possibly on a VF, but in a VFR, this thing curls around too much. Way back in there is where they mount into the back of the exhaust ports on the, there'll be number 1 and number 3. 1 to the left, 3 closest to the camera. And you're not going to get in there to get those out. And plus, they have to, if you're going to put those in, like replace them, for example, while the engine's in, if that's even possible on this, they'd have to be kind of done this way, like brought out and brought back in. I've done it on the VF750 before. It's a real pain in the ass, but it's possible. So what ends up happening is, this of course is your front header for number 4. Remember, it's 1, 3, 2, 4. So this is the number 4 header that was helping me out in the long run. And that's going to come off, but the rear one for number 3 here will stay. Drop the engine down, get it out, and hopefully not break it or bend it. Once the engine's out, then I can pull that pipe off and get it out of the way completely. You know what? I need a break. I'm tired. All right, we're on the kickstand side now, so take your bets. I'm giving it about a 1 in 5 chance of being fairly easy to take off. A 1 in 3 chance of coming off at all. Now, I wanted to touch base on that. Here's plan B, and I was already thinking about this on the other side. I saw a nice set of headers on Fleabay for like $1.25. I don't remember if there was shipping on top of that or not. If I can't get these out, these are getting cut. I'll cut it back here and cut it back here, so I've got something to grab a hold of. Once everything's apart, I'll twist these out to save this part of the muffler collector into 2 into 1, and then just replace the headers. You got to get to a point where you basically say it ain't worth it anymore as far as the effort and trying to take it apart. You're going to kill yourself or break something else. Whack it off, buy new ones. So we're going to try it first, but I got a gut feeling that I may end up bringing out the whiz wheel on this one. I'm going to see if I can unbolt and move, kind of rock it forward if it goes. It may not, to try to just take that front pipe off with the muffler and slide it off this one for number 1. Let's see if that works. I don't know if it's gonna, because that's pretty damn solid right there. I mean, as far as that rusted in there as well. So let me get these guys out, and we'll see if that works. Sometimes you can rock it down and clear it. It's just got to come forward a little bit, and then as soon as I can get it backwards a little bit, I can kind of rock it around, hopefully. I'm not 100% sure yet. Well, this thing's been fighting me, but I'm a little closer now. The flange is really hard to come off because this stud is bent backwards and out. So I didn't want to bend it much because you snap it off and, you know, it's going to be a pain in the ass. I'll replace that stud once the engine's out. Usually I make my own out of, this is I make my own out of bolts. This is an M6 125 thread. If I can get that stud out, I mean, I might be able to save it, but it needs to be bent a considerable amount, so probably just replace it. This is probably going to be one of these, you have to scratch it up as a loss, but I'll try it a little bit more, but I'm leaning more toward just whacking it and going online and ordering a new set of headers for it. It's tighter than a Canadian on his last nickel. I tell you what, this thing is just absolutely froze. So, you know, I left the muffler on, or the cans, on purpose, you know, because I figured we could use that as some leverage, which worked out pretty well on the other side, you know. It's getting in the way now because it's too tight to that foot peg. You know, if this was bolted on and I could take it off, it would make things a lot easier, but unfortunately it's part of the frame, so yeah. So I'm going to try to wiggle this off because I do have, you know, a place to grab down here on the lower pipe. Maybe we can rotate this around and get it off. Aha! Aha! Hey, tell you something. This is the tightest freaking exhaust I have taken off of anything ever. Ever. It is just wicked tight. Everything is just froze. Lord have mercy. This is the tightest. Son of a bitch. Oh, holy cow. Let me tell you something. That's ridiculous, especially with that bent stud right there. You can kind of see it. Let me see if I can get you in on that. See, that stud right there is bent in relationship to where it goes. It's kind of hard to see, but trust me. And so it was very hard to get that collar off. Glad I didn't give up on this one because I really didn't want to have to spend $1.25. Maybe I'll get them anyway. I mean, I have the money budgeted for this job. It's not going to be a resale where I'm going to try to make money on it. This is for me, so I don't know. I don't know. So, all right, let's move on. I do know that. And in the bin you go. All right, well, that was about 2.5 hours work to get that out. Condensed in, I don't know, 2 hours of video. Just kidding. Now, I'll show you something else here that's important to look at. And I'll tell you why here in a minute. Let me twist this around. First thing I do when I pull exhaust off any of these old bikes is look into the whole exhaust hole, you know, for the exhaust port. And what I'm looking for is just how it looks, you know, in general. But I'm looking to see if it looks like it's got oil that's coming out of the valve stem seal. These two look good. I don't know about the rears yet, but I get you better here. So, you know, carbon, no big deal. Looks pretty good. It's not terrible. I don't even know if it's focusing. I can hardly see it myself. But, you know, in the KZs in particular, it's real common when you get an old motor, you know, one of these things that hasn't run forever, and then you get it back running and it smokes, particularly at idle. And you're like, well, whenever it's got bad rings, do a compression test, do a leak down test, and the thing passes both of those. You pull the exhaust off, the headers, look up in there, and if you see that telltale sign of like oil burning off as it comes through, you'll see it. It's visible. You know you're going to have to pull the head. You can't do valve stem seals on a KZ1000 without pulling the head. They're recessed into the head, so the top of the valve, you know, the keepers are right flush with the top of the actual inside of the head where those holes are machined for the valve springs. And you can't get a spring compressor and the head's got to come off. You're going to do it that way. Not a terrible job, but pain in the ass. So those look good. I'm not too worried about that. It wasn't smoking anyway, so I wasn't concerned about, or I wasn't expecting to see it, but I just kind of wanted to mention that. On to the other side now. I'll come back when I get a couple more things undone. I know I got to pull that water pump and take some wiring off, like the starter cable and yada yada yada. I think that's actually over here. Yeah, starter is in bottom front right, like it is on the VF. Big old starter cable. We'll take that off and go on the other side. Off camera. See you in a bit. Here's the drain plug with the magnet. So that gives you an idea what's going on in there transmission-wise. Now, I'm not terribly surprised to see this. Wish I didn't see it at all. In fact, I might just pretend I didn't. But the bottom line is I'm knowing what this is now. This is definitely pieces of the gear cog. I've seen this before in that Bandit. It's not terribly unexpected. So, yeah. Either way, I'm going to pull the oil filter and cut it open and see if what it's got inside of it. That'll be a good indicator as to what we're circulating. It may just be this little bit right here, you know, they got the magnet got it. So, of course, you know, you and I both know that's not the case, right? Hey, you never know, it might work. A little bit more speed on that. I got it in back gear, so it's going to go pretty slow. Let's see what happens. Let me back off that tool post. Let me back off tool post a little bit. You never know. I just want to score it. Go ahead and check this chuck again. Pretty tight. Yep. Good. I know, again, we got some chips from the operation, but what I'm more interested in is down here. Let me zoom you out a little bit. These are from the operation up here. All right. What's down on the bottom there is going to be telling as well. Let's go to a better location and inspect this. See what we can find. Take a clean magnet, and if you use a microfiber, that works well, because in fact, if you had one of these in your back pocket and you were at the supermarket, if you rubbed against one of the buggies, you take about a half dozen of them home with you. This is certainly unscientific, but best I can do. ain't nothing on that. I don't see anything in the actual filter material that jumps out at me. There's a spring. Maybe we should reuse that. Aha. So you got a bunch of junk in there on the outside of the filter, where it's supposed to be, in the filter housing. And nothing on the inside. So although it's not terribly good for the oil pump, I would suspect that we're probably okay as far as this thing doing its job. Because like you saw, I swirled it around the inside of that. I don't really see any significant pieces in this filter material. Now, some filters and some cars, the guys put a magnet on the outside of the filter, and maybe there is one in here. I don't know if there is one or not. I doubt it. Nope. But yeah, you see all that junk. So there is a ton of metal in here, but that's transmission. I'm telling you right now the way this thing's behaving. So not unexpected, but it's not a a loss at all. It's not going to be a deal breaker, in other words. But you see all that crap, and the filter did its job. So it's in the outside of the filter element, not the inside. So it went through and it got picked up by the pickup and then filtered out by the filter. But again, that oil pump, saw some of this, or all of it rather. So now when I take this apart, I'll be dealing with the oil pump separately, because naturally I have to take that out. And I got all new O-rings coming for that as well. So I'll be inspecting that. I hope the service manual has that information. There's usually information in the service manual on when you take the oil pump apart, because it's going to be a gear type, I'm pretty sure, just like the VF. And you can check clearances inside the filter with a feeler gauge, feel them up gauge, get a better idea, whether the filter is, rather the pump is trash. I doubt it. These things are pretty hardy, and the filter does what it's supposed to do. So, all right, now we know for sure that there's a ton of crap in there. So, but again, I'm not terribly surprised by that. We are at the left side, of course, and the next steps were to pull the slave cylinder clutch slave off the cover, take the cover off, the sprocket cover. And when I did that, I could see that there's some orange goo in there. See that gasket material right about there? So somebody's had that shifter cover off before. So they must have been trying to fix this problem with the engine on the bike. I could have told them that's not going to happen. All right, so I have the sprocket loose. Now, these bolts can be wicked tight, especially when they're the nuts. Like if you have a big fine threaded shaft that comes out. There must be a joke there somewhere. But I was able to rattle that off with the 3/8 impact pretty quick. Just have it loosely in here. Because what we have to do is loosen the tension on the chain. It's really simple on these, of course. Is just loosen the axle and the adjusters and give her a wrap. Slack. This is what I do on these all the time, just push it forward. Now usually with that kind of slack, what I can do is just take the sprocket off, then kind of just kind of wiggle the sprocket out, and then just let the chain settle back. Now the only problem with these are if it's not a master link chain, and I don't see one, but I didn't really take a good look yet. You can't take the chain off to have it as a rolling chassis, just rolling it around without being a real pain in the ass. There's a couple of tricks that I do to do that, which is not going to get covered in here, where I can leave the chain on. So, otherwise you have to pull the swing arm. I'm not going to do that at this point. So what we're going to do now is just get this chain off and then, take it from there. So I just kind of wanted to show you what I found so far. Here's the setup I came up with. What I'm going to do, instead of lowering it down on a jack, I'm going to lower it down on the hoist. I have a primitive little trolley system set up with this 500-pound hoist. And I've hoisted out and in and out and in, inline 4s, KZ1000, the Bandit 1200, other things like that. I know it holds. I don't really know how much this engine weighs, but it's got to be comparable to that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, follow the order of which fastener to take out, with the exception of the fact that I took these upper ones out first, because I'm slinging underneath this major part of the casting here that these bolts go into, not on the bolt itself. I just have some washers in there to be a safety in case it wants to go backwards, but with this kind of an angle, it's not going to want to do that anyway. It's kind of right in that little groin there, if you will. And so front ones just run around, not against the studs, but against the aluminum bosses that those are threaded into. So I got it really well secured as far as that goes. And I've used these straps, like I said, for this purpose before. A nice thing about it is you can kind of adjust them on the fly. Pick something up, it's not quite balanced, let it back down, adjust these, and then you can get it whichever way you want, in that regard. So, and what I did down here is I took this big piece of 2 by, I don't know, 2 by something, 2 by 10, and I used the drill press, hole saw, and relieved some of that for these, these holes for these little fins that are sticking down the bottom of this sump pan here. This is definitely strong enough to hold the engine weight. Hell, they want you to jack from there, but I don't want to put any individual pressure, or at least as little as possible, on these little fins. So I've got the cutouts for that, and that furthest one over there accommodates both the little fin and the drain plug, and that little half round thing around it, that's a protector so you don't whack the drain plug riding down over a speed bump or something. So basically that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm pushing the stand, I'm going to get some weight off of it, and then follow the order of operations for removing bolts. First one's got to go is this lower one, and then well, I forgot exactly which one after that, but I'll just I think, yeah, this lower one, and I believe this one's a through bolt as well. It goes through the entire front. Yeah, they want you to take these 2 out first, and then you take the other smaller ones off, and it references the spacer there, for example. And then we'll see if we can just lower her down without destroying the bike, the engine, or me, in that order. Ran into our first real significant problem. Not, life-altering, but a problem nonetheless. Let me get my light and I'll show you. These guys right here, those engine bolts right there. Here's the one from the left side. These were seized like big time. The one from the side that we're on right now. Okay, so what caused it? Essentially, this hole here is a through hole. I thought it was an actual long bolt like you see typically in other bikes, but it's not. So you have a through hole that goes right to about here where my finger is, and that's open. And all the years of water and so forth got inside there and has made that where I was really worried they were going to snap. It's taken me a little over an hour to get these 2 bolts out. And that's heating it and cooling it, heating it and cooling it, working it back and forth, hitting it with more lubricant. When it starts to bind up, walk away from it, let the internals cool down, because that friction generates a ton of heat in that aluminum and just makes it tighter. So you stop, let it cool, work it back and forth, rinse and repeat basically until you get it out. Now, definitely, whoa, slippery. Definitely took some threads, and since it took threads in this end, it drug those all the way through. So we'll have to see what the threads look like. I'm sure they're trashed, so I'm going to end up probably having to go to the next size up. These are M10s. I mean, it's an M10 125 pitch, and we'll have to go to M12s. Now, looks like there's enough material in there to do it. I don't want to necessarily use a regular thread insert and something important like that. I'd probably have to get a, what do you call it? I forgot the name of them now. They're the metal inserts. Help me, time certs. That's what it is. And I don't even have the kit, but you can buy time cert kits for a specific size thread. And so I probably might have to get a time cert kit. And, they're expensive, but I'll give you a hint on this when you're taking these bolts out, any of these engine bolts, because you have the weight of the engine on it. Even when you got something suspending it, or in this case, I went down and put a jack underneath here so I could better finite adjust the load that's on the fasteners downwards from the weight of the motor. And then if you crank it up too high, you'd have the opposite effect. So you got to kind of find that middle ground. And if it feels really bindy, lower it down a little bit, try it again, raise it up a little bit, and I was able to find that sweet spot. So I know it wasn't the shank. You can see the shanks are not all tore up from a significant amount of force radially against it. And so, if it's bending down this way and trying to push it as you're turning it, that wasn't the case. I found that sweet spot. It was just corroded in. So a couple more small fasteners to move out. They are loose. They came loose okay. One's up here, one's up there. And then I'm going to get that jack out of the way and we'll start lowering this down. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and check those holes. I'll show you what we find. Alrighty, she's being suspended by the hoist. So let's go ahead and start letting her down, see what happens. There's a whole lot of different space that go between the frame and the actual the motor itself. But you can see she's pretty free to navigate right now. Yeah, based upon how this feels, this thing don't weigh that much compared to other ones I've worked with. Yeah. All right. She's on the wood, fellas and ladies. And yeah, all right. Let's get some air. We'll blow these holes out and we'll take a look at them. This is the right one. This one was tighter than this, the left one. It was harder to get out. Let me see if I can go behind it with a light. Get a better idea what the threads look like. They don't look very good. Feels good. Maybe savable. You never know. I mean, sometimes with these things, you know, sometimes these things are not all that screwed up. And if you have enough thread inside there to compensate for it, then yeah, she's going to go straight through. Yeah, there's enough clearance back there. Oh, yeah. Yeah. There ain't nothing in the back. It's gone. I don't see any threads in the back at all. Yeah, if they're there, there ain't much of them. Best way to do is put a clean bolt in and see if it warbles around. If it does, then it tells for sure. But here's a pristine M10. It came off another engine mount location. Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible. There ain't no threads left, except in the very front. Okay, so we're going to have to figure out a way to do this as accurate as possible. Oh, that's going to suck, because we got to get that straight. All right, I'm rambling. Let's close this thing out and go crying our cornflakes at your particular discretion. Well, folks, look at the bright side. The engine is out. That was the objective here. And it could have been much worse. Had even one of these snapped and it was not flush with the engine side of it, this thing wouldn't come out at all. It would act like a dowel pin and locked it up. And wouldn't be able to do anything with it. So that's why it took a little over an hour to get both of these bolts out. And I kind of figured it was going to take the threads, but I'd rather have that than that alternative. So I'll have to figure out what repair process that I'm going to use for this. I'm leaning more toward a time cert. I'm not 100% familiar with these. I've only seen them, never used one, but my neighbor down the road with his shop, he uses them quite often, so I might get him over here to give me a tutorial and help me out when I go to do that job. Next videos are going to be, or next video, I'm not going to fire up the recording device till I get this thing over to a table and get all the top bolts out. Then I'll flip it over and I'll bring you back and we'll start videoing the final removal of fasteners to split the case. Then we'll split the case and take a look at the carnage inside there together. So, hey, you know, it is what it is. And it is what it is as well if you go in there and subscribe and then you like this video and you ring the bell to the channel, you get notified when I put more videos up, whether it's on this or anything else. So as usual, thanks for watching. And don't just repair, restore. Catch you on the next video.